I want to make a statement. The PAP government has been a disappointing failure, and it is a government that is bad for the people of Singapore. Let me explain why I say this. In 1983, the government found that our birth rate was too low, 1.7, compared to 2.1, which is the birth rate needed to sustain the population. So they try to introduce measures to encourage families to have more children. Now, 40 years have passed, and instead of increasing the birth rate, our birth rate has fallen now to almost 1.0. It's less than 1.7, and at 1.0, it is half of what is needed to replace the population. So here is quite clear. 40 years of effort, and instead of achieving success, the PAP have been a dismal failure, and the failure is very serious. Now, the people who apologize for the PAP says, "Oh, this is a worldwide problem. It's not Singapore alone." Now, I disagree. Sure, worldwide there's a decline in birth rate, but Singapore's decline is much worse than other countries. We are probably among one of the very low birth rate. Now, there's another reason I want to give. The low birth rate in Singapore is due to the very high cost of living. And the high cost of living is contributed by high taxes imposed by the government. Now, when you have high taxes and people could not afford the high cost of living, they then stop producing children. I'm not saying that every family stop producing, but maybe half the population will not produce children, or maybe they only have at most one. So when you have a large part of the population cannot afford to have two or more children, then the population decline is quite serious. Now, some countries cannot afford to help the citizens to have more children. They cannot afford to keep the cost of living low. But that's not the case in Singapore. In Singapore, our reserves keep on increasing, and currently it's $1.7 trillion. That's a lot of money. So what are we accumulating all this reserve for? By increasing taxes, very high taxes, the taxes on sale of land, that then goes into the cost of property. Property prices are too high. Then you got taxes on transport, on cars, you got GST, you got so many other taxes. Now all this make the cost of living very high, and then that makes the people can't afford to have children. So this is another reason why I think the PAP has been very disappointing. They keep on accumulating the reserves at the expense of the livelihood of the people. People can't afford the high cost of living, so they stop producing children. Now, if you agree with what I said, that the PAP has been a dismal failure and has been bad for the people of Singapore, now what can we do? Now, some people say we should vote them out. It is not so easy because the alternative government is not ready. The opposition, the non-PAP parties, they are disunited. They cannot form the next government. So the next best thing that can happen is that the PAP will continue to be the government, but the opposition should be able to win more seats in parliament, so that they can voice out the wishes of the people, and the wishes should be bring down the cost of living, make it possible for more families to have children. Now, I'm not forcing every family to have children. Some will prefer not to have children. That's fine. But majority, I believe, will want to have children if they can afford it. So if you bring down the cost of living, the cost of raising children, then that would be a better alternative for Singapore. So we need to have, therefore, enough opposition MPs in Parliament who can voice out this alternative view. And then that would be better for Singapore. Now, there is a fear that if too many people vote for the opposition, then the PAP might lose power and Singapore will be chaotic. Now, this fear is unfounded, is exaggerated. No matter how much the educated people, the people who are aware, wish to see a strong opposition in Parliament, the PAP will still continue to have the support of many people who are not so politically aware. Sadly, Singapore, you have these large groups of people. So if all those who are aware about the risks of the PAP, if they all vote against the PAP, vote for opposition, it doesn't matter which opposition party, just vote opposition. Now, at best, you can only expect more opposition from current 10, maybe 20, maybe 30. To go beyond 30 will be extremely difficult, at least for the immediate future. So I would like to appeal to all those who are aware of the problem. Don't worry that the PAP will collapse. They will not. What we need is to have 30 opposition MPs in Parliament, and that will, I hope, make some change for the better of Singapore. I hope you agree with me, and thank you for listening.
My fellow Singaporeans, very good afternoon to all of you. You know, over the last few weeks, I have taken a particular interest to find out the cost of food in food centres and hawker centres. So 2 weeks ago, I was in Mountbatten, and I found that the drink of choice for me, Teh C Kosong, cost $1.50 in a coffee shop. Now, I was very surprised because I recall that not too long ago, I could buy that cup of Teh C Kosong for $1.30 or even $1.20. I then moved on to a second coffee shop in Mountbatten and found that the price was exactly the same, $1.50. Yesterday, I was in Jalan Besar, the Bendemeer Market, and I then moved on to Potong Pasir to visit the residents there. And I found that at both places, the price was the same, $1.50 for Teh C Kosong. Now that appears to have become the norm, although some people tell me that in other places, it could be even pricier, $1.60 for example. Now my friends, I think for the PAP ministers who earn humongous salaries, what is 20-30 cent increase? Nothing, right? It's not even a drop in the ocean for them. But do you know that in Singapore, there are about 420,680 workers who do not even take home $1,704 a month. I think for these people, a 20-30 cent increase in drinks is huge. And you know, recently there was a report done by Dr. Ng Kok Ho of the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy and Associate Professor Teo Yu Yen of NTU that suggested that a reasonable starting point for a living wage in Singapore is $2,906. That is what a person needs, right, to be able to live decently. But again, did you know that there are about 765,800 workers who do not make that a month? Now that is a huge percentage of our workforce. And to these people, a 20-30 cent increase in a basic drink is huge. Now, people have been complaining about the rising cost of living, yeah? But have you ever asked yourselves, what is the real cause behind it? Well, I can tell you this. We have a government that at the worst possible time has chosen to increase transport fares, has allowed transport fares to be increased imminently, all right, in December of this year. Is going to increase water price by 18% over 2024 and 2025. Yeah. Has already increased electricity tariffs. Now, of course, all this translates into higher prices for your food, for your drinks in hawker centers, don't they? And this is even before the 1% GST kicks in next January, the 1% hike in GST. Now, my friends, government can control these things, but they choose not to. Yeah. And that is why you are suffering today. You know, we have a government that is quite happy for things like COE to get priced outrageously. You know, $152,000 for open category COE, $85,000 for a commercial vehicle COE. Now, who suffers? You and I, right? The person who drives that commercial vehicle or the company that operates it will be looking to pass down the cost of the increased COE to us at the end of the day. Isn't that right? You know? And so we have a government who is the ultimate beneficiary, because when prices rise, GST collections increase, all right? To them is boom time Charlie. Ka-ching, ka-ching, right, goes their cashier's till. Whereas you and I, our purses become so much lighter. So, my friends, you know, it is not that government cannot do anything, but they refuse to. Look at the COE system. It has been in place for 32, 33 years. But they refuse to change it. They refuse to modify it. Yeah. People say, why do you allow the commercial companies, the car dealers, all right, to compete with the ordinary person who needs a car for his family, maybe to ferry his elderly parents for their medical appointments, for that salesperson who needs a car for his job? Yeah. And they are crowded out by these huge companies with the financial muscle. So, my friends, if you have a reasonable government, if you have a government who is interested in bringing prices down, in controlling the cost of living, they will do things differently. But right now, you have a government that is only interested in maximizing revenue collection. And that is why you and I are suffering. And I suggest that at the next GE, you remember this and you make a change. Thank you very much.
My dear Singaporeans, we are already experiencing high inflation rate, especially for the food. For most people, some of the food items have gone up by 30%, whether it's hawker center, coffee shop, or the restaurant. And yet, PAP government have decided to increase our burden in cost of living, in spite of all this inflationary pressure. Whether it's water, electricity, public transport, or even postage. Now, a lot of people say that these are small increases. But when you add all this up in one shot, the burden on the lower income group will be very, very great. Well, PAP will say we will give vouchers, another $200 vouchers coming, right, for December. But these vouchers are short-term. What is imposed on us, like the increase in water, is long-term. It will stick to with you for the rest of your life. And it will actually affect your standard of living because cost of living will go up. Your savings will depreciate in their purchasing power, whether it's in CPF or just your saving account. Now, well, PAP justify all these increases. Some are very justifiable. You see, energy costs went up, so electricity will go up, right? And bus fares will go up, public transport fares will go up, and water fees will go up. But look, these companies, almost all of them are still making money. That's number one. Why should you continue to increase the prices while they are making money? And in fact, some of the companies have accumulated over billions of dollars of accrued profits over the decades. They are not in great debts, mind you. They are not going to be bankrupted. That's number one. Number two, some of the increases are unreasonable. Let me show you why. First of all, water. We just take water for example, right? We have already taxed water conservation tax, water bond tax, right? For domestic use, potable water. And you know what? Our tax is 50% for water conservation tax. But as a person, as a human being for domestic usage, can you show us the data? Are we really wasting water? Are we wasting water in such a way that the demand, the consumption is bigger than the commercial side? And the commercial water, industrial water is not taxed at all, right? New water, only 10% tax, while we suffered 50% tax. And worst of all, GST imposed on our taxes, tax on tax. Is that reasonable? That's number one. Number two, right? The tax, the increases of taxes, along with the water tariff, are supposed to cover future needs by transferring this amount to build infrastructure for more new water plants, for more desalination plant. But look, new water is basically for commercial. Why are we being imposed more taxes, more increment in water prices for the commercial users? Is that fair at all? Well, we already know that the demand of water for the commercial will increase in percentage from 40% to 45% of total water consumption. Is it fair for us to be taxed for future increment of consumption just to cater for them and future expansion of population? It is not fair. And in fact, to treat water from reservoirs to become potable is actually cheaper than new water. But our water tariff, after the increment, after this round of increment, will actually cost more than the new water. Does it actually sound logical at all? And it boils down to one simple fact. PAP government no longer take citizen as their prime concern. We are no longer their priorities. Their priorities is to take care of the commercial users and privatizing costs, privatizing profits actually for the commercial users, while socializing the cost of these commercial users onto us. We need water because We need water to live. Nobody can survive without water. But the commercial users are using water to make money. And should we, as a domestic users, be subsidizing the commercial space of demand? This is for something for you to think about when you go to the ballot box in the coming election. Thank you.
Let the numbers do the talking. It has been announced that public transport fares will increase by as much as 11 cents or 7%. At 11 cents, this is the highest ever absolute price increase in public transport fares in the history of Singapore. And that is not all, because the increase was supposed to be much more based on the public transport fares formula. So about 15+% of the increase has been deferred to the future. Some years ago, when under the old public transport fare formula, and it resulted in a never before price decrease instead of a price increase, part of the decrease was also deferred. Now it's understandable that you defer part of the increase because it's too much in one go. It may not be palatable to the public. But when the old formula resulted in the decrease in fares, how is it that even part of the decrease was deferred? Sounds kind of weird and strange, isn't it? See, the problem with the public transport fare is that the way it is structured, it almost ensures or guarantees that fares will always go up. The public transport fares formula is based on core inflation, wage increase, and energy prices. So inflation is always going up, wages are always going up, and energy prices, although they move up and down, right, but now it's high. And so the public transport fares almost inevitably always goes up. Now, every time there is a debate in Parliament talking about, can you don't increase the fares, or calls to spend more money on various other things, or that there's a need for more revenue, that's why they need to increase GST, whatever, and so on. The debate is often centered on the need for fiscal prudence and the need to be prudent when you want to spend more money. So let's look at the budget surplus or deficits. In financial 2023, the estimate, the transfers to endowment and trust funds has increased by 169% compared to the previous year, from 6 over billion to 16 over billion. The deficit estimate is 0.35 billion. But here's the issue. Transfers to endowment and trust funds is actually charging in 1 year as an expenditure in 1 year funds that will be used many years in the future. And under IMF fiscal reporting guidelines, you shouldn't be doing that. Because when you charge off something for use in many years in the future in one time, 1 year, you are arguably actually under-reporting the surplus. So this is what I call the issue of the cash flow versus the accounting perspective of the budget surplus. So back to financial year 2023, if you look at the cash flows versus the accounting, it may not be a budget deficit of 0.35 billion. It's actually a surplus of more than 10 billion. Let the numbers do the talking. Thank you.